Hello, Rogue One. This is your Rogue leader, Leslie Eiler Thompson, back for another edition of the Rogue Ones podcast, in which we have the delight and privilege of sitting down with some extraordinary folks who have found success with where they are and with what they're doing, and we just talk to them about their failures, things that worked well for them, opportunities they might have had, and we talk about what it all means and see what we can glean from it. This week's guest is very special to me. He's actually a family member. His name is Matti. He's my second cousin, and he is an Instagram influencer and photographer, and you should go follow him on Instagram right now. His handle is Matti. That's Matti. He has gorgeous photography of nature and his travels all around the world. And while we didn't really grow up together because he was living overseas for the beginning of his life, we have several moments in our timeline in which our paths cross. And this conversation was fun because we began to trace his life back to those moments when he would come back to the United States from being overseas, and how all of it culminated into a really beautiful patchwork quilt of a career in which he gets to travel and take photos for his work. So it was a joy to talk to him. I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to go ahead and just hop on into this conversation. I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Matti. Enjoy. I think we've only spent like 10 hours total together.
Yeah, I think so.
In our entire lives, yes. But what I remember is, and we're going to touch on this, is that your parents were missionaries in Indonesia and the Philippines, and you would come back to the States, and you rarely wore shirts, and also no shoes.
Yeah.
So cool. And also, I remember there was a night where we were bored at Grandma Rosie's house, your aunt, and my grandma, because she doesn't really have any technology, and you guys were comfortable with that, and I was just like, what am I supposed to do? And she had a lot of books, and I remember one day Laura picked up like a, what are those little kids that live in the train?
Boxcar Children?
Yes, thank you. She picked up a Boxcar Children book and just like sat and read it all day, finished the thing. It was amazing to me. So
yeah, we were definitely unique children, you could say.
But so good. So now I look back and it's so beneficial to have all those skills. So Michael is a photographer, a travel and outdoor photographer, and an Instagrammer.
Yeah.
There's it's like the same thing, kind of.
Yeah. You can call it lots of different things. I post a lot on Instagram, and I influence people, I guess.
His story is very unique from the beginning to now, and certainly with all the changes going on with social media and everything, it's just kind of a cool conversation to have. So thank you for being here. One of the first things I like to ask my guests, it's a phrase from a musical, and the musical is Thoroughly a Modern Millie, and one of her favorite things to ask is, you were born and then what happened? And I think for you that's a particularly interesting question because you were born in a very different place from most of us.
Yeah, so starting at the very beginning, I was born in Ujung Pandang, Indonesia. That's quite a bit to say, but now it's called Makassar. And yeah, that's on the island of Sulawesi, right in the middle of Indonesia. And so I spent my first few years of life there in Indonesia, and then lived in the Philippines as well. As you said, my parents were missionaries. So yeah, we lived in both Indonesia and the Philippines, and spent more time in the Philippines. And then, like you said, it was very unconventional childhood, just kind of running around, adventuring, and building forts in the jungle and stuff. And then ended up moving to the States when I was in 5th grade. Moved to Milford, Indiana.
Huge culture shock.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure.
It was difficult for all three of us kids. None of us really adjusted well. Just going from like living in the Philippines to then trying to fit in with like modern pop culture in America. We were definitely kind of outside of the norm, and just
and even going from a tropical to the Midwest is just like bitter cold.
Yeah. That was a struggle, and I still don't like cold weather. I think I still have tropical blood flowing through my veins, and can't deal with cold for too long. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was an adjustment for sure.
But you did stay in the Midwest for school.
Yeah, so I did ended up went to middle school and high school, and then went to college in Indiana. Went to Indiana Wesleyan University down in Marion, Indiana. Like a lot of people nowadays going to college, you're just kind of trying to figure yourself out. So I went in, I had done well in like math, was my strongest subject. So I was like, well, computer programming, that sounds like a good fit. So I went in as a computer science major, and then started taking calculus 2 after the first semester, and I was like, nope, I'm done with this. I wasn't ready for more math. I just was kind of tired of it and wanted something a little bit more creative and less rigid, I guess. So ended up switching from computer science to intercultural studies, which was a bit of a jump.
Yeah, that pendulum swung all the way.
But the thought process there was like, I grew up in another culture and just loved new places and new people and like connecting with people and cultures and all that. And so I was like, well, this could be a natural fit. So I switched to that. Figured maybe I'd work overseas in something or a nonprofit or whatever. And then ended up kind of, I don't know, just didn't really connect with that. I think a lot of it was also sort of just review of like things I already knew in life, just from my experiences. And so then I switched to business after that. And I think that was more just like, business is very broad. Everything's a business. And so I'll figure out what I want to do within business, maybe something entrepreneurial type thing. Halfway through college, so after my sophomore year, I had a little point and shoot like a lot of people did at that time, just taking pictures of random stuff, posting trips on Facebook or whatever, nothing serious. I was at the beach with my family one day and dropped the camera in the sand and it broke. So I was like, well, I want a new camera. I mean, I was pretty sad. It was like $100 camera, but still, you're in college. Every dollar counts.
Yeah, every dollar counts.
I started looking at cameras, and I had enjoyed, taking pictures and kind of being more creative. And I was like, these DSLRs, these kind of look cool. Like all these buttons and controls. Like I could, do so much more, and maybe, start taking like some cool photos and just kind of testing that out. So I ended up buying the cheapest DSLR they made at the time, which was a Canon Rebel XS. Bought that camera that summer and just playing around with it that summer, really just fell in love with it. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I love taking photos and being creative and capturing moments and sharing stories. And so went back to college, changed my major to photography. And at that point, I had a basic understanding of things, but I really didn't know that much about photography. And I was kind of jumping in a little late in the game in terms of like, most of my classes were with younger kids because I was, 2 years into school. But I ended up graduating on time with a degree in photography. And it was work. Yeah, it was, I definitely had a lot to learn with photography. And
I think that's what's fascinating about that is there's an Instagrammer named Jenna Kutcher, who's a wedding photographer in Wisconsin, and part of her story, she'll share this all the time, is she started with a $200 like Craigslist camera, and I feel like this Craigslist camera photo taking culture is, I think a lot of people are really into that idea because they're like, ooh, that's a low level of whatever, but then I can charge somebody $3,000 for taking photos at their wedding,
Yeah.
So I think the commitment of majoring in photography is really cool, and I feel like is that a rare thing? Do you find that that's rare among photographers? Or
yeah, it's definitely rare especially in what I'm doing now. Like the majority of my friends don't have any formal photography education, and then a lot of my friends or just like acquaintances that I went to school with that also studied photography, they aren't doing anything with photography. So it's kind of, it can go either way. It really depends on the person. think it also depends on what kind of photography you want to do. Like you had mentioned wedding photography, that's kind of one of the easiest things to just get into. So in terms of a photography degree helping you with wedding photography, it won't as much as, say, if you're working in like a commercial studio, working with a lot of like high-end lighting techniques and things like that. School will definitely help a lot more with that. So I went to school, and the photography I studied was kind of like half commercial, half fine art, and I kind of thought I wanted to do product photography, working in studios, like with a lot of, because kind of with my stemming back to the computer science, just like the different lighting setups and all of the technical information and stuff, all the numbers and whatnot, that kind of appealed to me. 2 days after I graduated, I drove out to Seattle, made the big move out west.
The big move.
But yeah, when I moved out here, I started assisting at studios in the area that shot a lot of commercial and product stuff. And I assisted at one quite often that shoots all the stuff for Starbucks. So that's the kind of stuff that I thought I wanted to be doing, was just shooting different products like that, which is so weird to think about. And then I also shot weddings, even while I was in college, started shooting weddings. Weddings are one of the best ways to make good money in photography right out of the gate, in terms of like, I can't just go shoot products for Starbucks. Like I was just assisting. I was setting up lights and managing the files and stuff. But weddings, you can just say, hey, I'm a wedding photographer. When you start out, it's a lot of referrals from friends. And when you're in college, you get a lot of those because everyone's getting married.
Right.
So
that's just it's a great place to be when you're a wedding photographer.
Exactly, yeah. So
do you find that you're more introverted or extroverted?
I find that I'm very much in the middle on that.
Okay.
I would classify myself as an extroverted introvert. So I would be slightly more introverted in that I don't like big crowds, and I don't do well like meeting people that I don't know and things like that. Just like I like small groups and that like one-on-one time.
Is that ambivert? Because I often find I'm there as well. I'm very outgoing. I do get energy from being with people, especially people I know well. It's very hard for me to wind down at night, but I don't like going into a networking party, for example, is just like pure hell.
Yeah.
Like I don't know anybody. How am I? Why would I want to walk up to you and just shake your hand?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Interesting. I'm just trying to see if product photography, was that just? It felt a little less like having to be this extroverted, outgoing sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just always fascinating to me.
Yeah, exactly. Product photography, you're more like just kind of on set, kind of dialed in. Wedding photography, though, like I said, I am kind of extroverted in that, like, I do love people, and I do love like connecting with people. In wedding photography, one of the reasons I actually did enjoy it was like I got to capture these moments that people would, enjoy for the rest of their life, and so it was very meaningful, which was different from the product photography, because that, at least to me, wasn't super meaningful. It was just like, I want to shoot this product, make it look good, so that it can sell.
Right. Yep.
And so the wedding photography was a nice change up from that, but I definitely did feel drained after like every wedding I shot. It was almost like I would put on like my work game face, and then once I took it off, I was like exhausted, just talking to people and like commanding people and what to do.
So you moved out to Seattle and kind of intended to do the product photos. And then what happened?
Yeah, so I was doing the product photography and the wedding photography, and I also considered doing wedding photography full time, and so I did shoot quite a few weddings. I shot like 25 weddings or so over the course of a couple of years, which is...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, most people don't realize that when they look at my photos now. But then just living out in Seattle, and one of the reasons I moved out to Seattle, besides having a sister that lived here, was just the outdoor scene here. I mean, you've got mountains just right outside of the city. You've got forests, waterfalls, lakes, and then the ocean's right there. So there's just so much outdoors to explore, and I've always loved the outdoors kind of growing up in places where there was lots of outdoors to explore. I found myself drawn to the wild spaces here and just kind of was hiking and backpacking and camping just like for fun because it was what I love to do. And so I started taking my camera on those trips more and just shooting those, and then started posting those images and kind of like the more professional looking images on my Instagram. Because up until that point, I had just been using Instagram like a lot of people, where I'm just posting, you know, random pictures taken with my phone of
your food.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Look what I saw on the street this morning.
I mean, yeah,
exactly.
I think if you scroll back way back on my Instagram, you'll see pictures of like pizza in a red box.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly. So how was that? And that's the same for me, though of course I'm not like a Instagrammer or influencer, but like and every so often I think I need to go back and archive those, but you know it's going to take 15 hours.
Right.
Was that transition for you, like was that an intentional thing? Did you struggle at all with that, where you thought, okay, all of my followers, my friends on Instagram, suddenly I'm going to be like posting these photos that are like things, like these are like I'm becoming more of a thing. Was that a weird thing for you, or did that was it natural?
It was kind of it wasn't like a set decision sort of, so it was kind of slower, so it was a little bit more natural. There wasn't one day where I just decided, you know what, I'm going to post only these types of images. It was more like I would post, it started kind of over a summer. I did a lot of backpacking stuff, and I basically just kind of gradually got more and more professional with it and started posting the other stuff less and less. And then it got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm starting to get some traction on these photos. Like people are liking and commenting, and you know, got up to like a couple thousand followers. And I was like, okay.
And what year was that?
Oh, that was, when was that? That was 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay, so was that before Facebook acquired?
Yeah, oh yeah. That was definitely before Facebook acquired.
Yeah. How did you...
Yeah, 3 years ago.
Man, the algorithm thing like blows my mind all the time, and every time, you know, it's just like I just have no idea what's going on ever. But at that time, did you find that it was very organic, like with people coming to find you? What did that look like?
And I was kind of fortunate to sort of get into the Instagram space at the time that I did. I mean, I was definitely behind some people who got into it sooner in terms of like turning a personal Instagram account into more of like a professional brand. But it was much easier when I got into it than I would say it is now, just because it's a lot more crowded of a space in terms of people posting professional images. When I got into it, it wasn't as common of a thing. And so that definitely helped me grow, was kind of getting in that early wave of these kind of professional Instagrammers, so to speak.
And how did that start? How did that start rolling? Like
so I also, again, kind of got fortunate. I had a big sort of jump start to my Instagram. Like I had said, I started it in the summer when I was backpacking and posting all these outdoors kind of camping shots, and I think I was up to like 4,000 followers. And then Instagram itself reached out to me and wanted to kind of share my page as, you know, like an outdoor. They're like, we love what you're doing in the outdoors, want to share kind of your like camping portfolio. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. So ended up getting a feature from Instagram. So they shared like a photo of mine and like mentioned me, and they shared it on, you know, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and their blog and everything. And so in a matter of 3 days, I went from 4,000 followers to 25,000 followers.
Wow.
And so from there, it was like, I mean, I guess you could say the rest was history.
Yeah. Do they do that anymore?
So they do. And I've been shared since then by Instagram in sort of the same
very cool
realm. But I think the last time I was shared by them, it was like 3,000 followers.
Interesting.
So it was just at like this time.
It was the right time.
Where everybody was kind of more keen to follow people. Nowadays, people are already kind of following who they're following, and they're not looking to follow as many new people as they once were. Just if you look at how many people are following now versus how many people people were following back 3 years ago. Like, yeah, I kind of just got lucky to get in at the right time. And I mean, I think I would have continued on the path that I'm on now. I would just be a little bit behind in that path because I was growing at a fast rate and like would have continued to grow, but definitely that early boost from Instagram itself was
extremely helpful.
Yeah, a catalyst that sort of launched me into what I'm doing now quicker than I would have had, done on my own.
Did you ever have like a plan where you're like, I'm going to keep pushing this because this is going really well? Or were you just always doing the backpacking, taking the photos and just posting them because you love to do it? You know, when did it sort of become like, oh, wait, this is a thing?
Yeah, it definitely started out as just kind of doing it for fun and sharing it with my friends because when I started out, the only people following me were like my friends, people I'd met in college and stuff. So it was, just for fun, and then it's definitely a gradual process, and started out just posting and then kind of grew, and then there wasn't kind of a moment where I was like, this is what I'm doing as my career. It slowly transitioned into that. So you start out where it's like, oh, this company is going to give me a free thing to post on Instagram. This is amazing. And like, I remember doing my first hotel stay with a hotel, and it was like, I get to stay at this hotel for free. Just share about it on Instagram. Like, so it starts out kind of, it was in Banff, Canada, actually. It's one of my favorite places up there. And it was crazy to get that first hotel stay, and kind of as I started to get more and more free things, and then eventually started to make a little bit of money, it would be like, oh, $100 to post here, or like, even I think I started with some posts were like $50.
Yeah.
You just start out like really small, and then as my account's grown, like I've been able to make more and more money from it, and just get recognized by more brands and get hired for more jobs. And then slowly, I mean, it's been over the course of 3 years, I stopped doing the assisting at product studios, and then I stopped shooting weddings about 2 years ago. And so I've been doing this whole like travel, work with outdoor and tourism brands through Instagram full-time for the last 2 years now.
So do you find that your business degree helped you with all of that? Like, are you finding you're like, oh, wow, actually, this was very helpful?
Yeah, so studying business definitely helped. And like, honestly, for what I'm doing now, like having a business degree probably would help more than the technical photography stuff that I learned, just because I'm like traveling and shooting and I'm not more in a studio. So, I mean, you can be the best photographer, but if you're not able to handle the business side of things, like you're not able to make a career out of it. Like it's,
Well, it's a lot. I think a lot of the things you're saying I relate to in the music sense, the music side of things. There are so many people that go to music school, and my emphasis was music tech. So I was learning a lot of things that weren't just simply like singing. But I've had a lot of conversations with former classmates who are waiters, waitresses, not even really doing any music anymore. And, in what I do in the marketing side of things and branding, actually there's a lot of stuff that I learned in college that contribute to that, the idea of building an identity and being an artist, and who are you as an artist, and all of those things go into brand development.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very interesting that for those of us who do choose to go to college, because certainly that's not everybody, but it's just very interesting how the little things kind of pop up and startle you years later as being relevant.
Yeah, exactly.
And you didn't think they were. What's in the future for you? Like, what are you just kind of operating like living in the moment, which is wonderful. Do you have any like long-term goals? What's the thought?
Yeah, I mean, this whole process is new for everyone, not just me. This kind of new realm of social media and like making money off of it. It's this whole new concept. So I think myself and just most of the people in this space are kind of just taking it as it comes and looking to build off the success they've already found. And so that's kind of what I'm doing, is just kind of building on what I have. And it's been encouraging to see, like, I'll do a job now that I would have done the exact same job for like a quarter of the money like 2 years ago.
Isn't that funny?
So it's great to just kind of continue to build my business, and just being open to what comes next, and that helps being with the freelance life, just having complete flexibility. Like I can choose projects here or there, and I can come up with my own projects, and I can pitch whatever I want. And
well, that's interesting you say that, because I think from what I've observed in the Instagram or influencer world, you know, you can either just take anybody who comes to you and like, we're going to pay you this much to do this thing, or there's a sort of crafting that can go into it with, okay, I've had these brands reach out to me as wanting representation. What if I craft this sort of a thing? So it's not just purely like, look at this product, but it's an all-out experience of, I go here while I'm using this, and like, or something even more developed than that. Do you find yourself doing that a lot?
Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot of selection and kind of working with brands to make sure that what I'm putting out there to people fits well with the brand, my personal brand that I've established. Because you don't want to, I'm not going to post, you know, like cosmetics on my page or something like completely random. Even if it pays, I mean, I guess everybody has their price, but
that's true.
no, I turn down a lot in order to keep my brand strong.
Well, that's something I was just listening to Tim Ferriss, who's 4 Hour Work Week, was listening to a podcast of his the other day, and he mentioned he only takes about 25% of the sponsorship inquiries.
It's definitely important to make sure that you're kind of respecting your audience in that way.
And I think that idea of taking care of your audience versus, because ultimately you realize the people that are following you are the ones that are going to help your career long term, but you're also kind of influencing them in a good way, and you want to be able to be a good steward of those resources. So in this whole kind of whirlwind experience for you, has there ever been like an out of body moment where you're like, what in the world? How is this happening to me? How did I get here? This is the coolest thing I've ever done ever.
Yeah, I mean, I have those all the time. Just not that my life's like this amazing thing, but like, I don't know. Even when I was studying photography in college, like, I would have these thoughts of, you know, it'd be amazing to travel around the world and take photos, but I sort of never really thought that it would actually be possible to make money. That's kind of why, I mean, I went into product photography because it was what I thought I could make a career out of and actually make money from. And I did enjoy it, and same thing with weddings, but I had always had these thoughts of, you know, traveling the world and taking photos, but I was like, there's no way to make money out of that. Like, you can't do that. So yeah, I mean, almost every trip I go on, I'm just like, is this happening? Like, I'm actually, like, this is my job? This is crazy.
Are there any times that you're taking trips and it's not your job, and you're just tripping?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, I probably travel just as much, if not more, on my own than for work. Just because I love travel so much, and I love experiencing places. And it is different when I do a work trip versus when I do a personal trip. It's kind of nice to have those personal trips because I'm completely on my own schedule and like deciding what I want to shoot and see and experience, as opposed to work trips. You know, there's always an agenda, and I still enjoy them, and it's still an amazing experience, but it's a work trip, so there's work to it.
Right, absolutely.
But they do look pretty similar in terms of work trips and personal trips, which I think is a good sign that I'm doing the right thing.
You're doing you're doing the thing that you love.
Yeah,
and it's fortunate that you get to do that. And I think it's funny, like our parents' generations would probably look at some of what our generation does and like, wow, you're getting paid to do that? That's crazy. But it's fortunately the world that we're cultivating, you know, for ourselves.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting to kind of watch even my parents kind of come around a little bit, and then like my grandpa, like trying to explain to him what I do, and like,
oh boy, yeah, I know
it's been fun because it's just so different, like the lifestyle that I live versus like the traditional 9-to-5 American dream, sort of.
Is it one of those things where every time you see him, he's like, now what do you do again?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But he loves it. He's excited because he loves travel too, and like my whole family loves travel, so they're really supportive and sometimes jealous of what I do, I guess.
So when you're on your trips that are just you, do you find those to be really creatively inspiring times, or do you find a lot of creative inspiration before those trips and that's why you go on them? Or like, what is your creative process for photography? Is that a silly question?
No, I mean, it's definitely different for every trip, and kind of going back to just the freelance lifestyle that I live, it gives me the flexibility to kind of pick and choose destinations that I want to go to. So oftentimes I'm not even picking the destination and being like, I need to go here and then planning a trip. I almost sometimes like look at where cheap tickets are to and stuff, especially if I'm, traveling on my own. And then there'll maybe a couple destinations I have in mind. And then, I see a cheap ticket to this destination I had in mind. And then I start planning my trip.
Oh, great.
And
do you go like just you, or do you have like some friends that go with you, or like?
Yeah, it depends on the trips and who I can rope into traveling with me.
Right.
So my roommate, who I lived with in college and live with now in Seattle, he does a few trips with me every year, just because he's close by, and so like my next trip is to New Zealand. So like it was wonderful. A flight deal that I had found online, and it was 3:00 in the morning. Like, who else is gonna buy tickets with me at 3:00 in the morning?
You just like bang on the wall.
Literally, yeah. It was 3:00 in the morning. I walked into his room and I was like, "Hey, Caleb, are you awake?" And he was like, "What?" I was like, "We gotta buy tickets to New Zealand right now." And he was like, "All right, I'm down." And that's the thing. Even my personal trips aren't completely personal. Like, I'm always sort of building my brand and building my portfolio. And then like, I'm also like Instagram. Not everything's just sponsored posts on Instagram. There's a lot of like image licensing and like content creation, shooting products. So sometimes when I go on trips, I'll have products that I'm shooting just for like a company, like a brand wants images and I'm going to a cool place, like it fits. And then also just I can always license images after the fact. Even though those brands and those like magazines and stuff, they do find me through Instagram now. It's kind of been interesting to see that shift, how like your website and stuff isn't as important as your Instagram.
Yeah, interesting.
Like big magazines are like looking on Instagram for photos to license. It's interesting.
So, and I noticed on your website you're also selling Lightroom presets.
Yeah, so that was something I started doing a little over a year ago now. Just kind of another stream of revenue and sort of helping people in their editing, and it's been fun. People have, I think, really enjoyed them so far.
Well, what was so interesting about it when I was looking at them is when we were first talking about you being a guest on this podcast, I just was letting my mind wander one night, and I was like, man, how does he get those colors? How does he? Because you're like Seattle fall photography. I'm a big fall fan.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just the most gorgeous thing. All of that foliage and the oranges and the reds. And I was like, man, how does he do that? And then I saw on your website you had the before and after. And I was like, well, the before looks pretty good, but man, that looks great.
Yeah.
So just a little plug. If you want some good fall photos, go to michaelmatti.com and get you some.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Lightroom presets. Is there a place that you like to go like a lot? Like, do you ever like to repeat trips, or are you more of a go to new places all the time?
A little bit of both, but I do find that like once I go to a place, I often find that I go to that place again relatively quickly. It's happened multiple times where I've never been to a place, and then I find myself there a couple times within a short period of time. That happened with Alaska for me. I hadn't been to Alaska, and then all of a sudden I was there like a couple, just like 2 months apart. And then the same thing with
Alaska.
Hawaii.
I have to go to Alaska.
Oh, Alaska's amazing.
I'm a massive Iditarod fan. Like, huge.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, raging.
Alaska in March is just beautiful. That was my first trip up there and caught the Northern Lights. And then
wow.
dog sledding is a blast. I mean, I didn't do anything like the Iditarod, but I went dog sledding in Montana this last year, and it was so fun. So I can imagine what the combination of Alaska and like really
Oh, my
professional dog
word.
sledding would be.
There's a guy named Martin Boozer who's won about 5 or 6 times. He's a legend in the thing. And he happens to be friends with somebody who's friends with somebody who lives here. And we met at one point, and she knows how much I'm into him. And he came down for a lecture at Vanderbilt, and she invited me to lunch with him.
Oh, wow.
And, like, it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. And I was sitting there like, I don't know if you watch Parks and Recreation.
Yeah. It's small town in Indiana. You got to watch Parks
Oh,
and Rec.
yeah, that's right. Oh, my gosh, I'm sure you related so much more than I did.
Oh,
But
yeah.
do you remember when she met Joe Biden?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was me. That was me and Martin Boozer.
I bet.
So you are repeating trips pretty quickly after you go to them?
Or it's just I'll like find something I love about a place, and I do love going back to places, but I also enjoy seeing new places, and I try and visit new places every year. Bali is a place that I keep going back to. Just like growing up in Indonesia, we would go to Bali kind of as like the vacation spot, and so I've made I made a trip in college with my family, and then I've done 2 trips now on my own as an adult. Just because I love it there so much.
Where do you want to go that you haven't gone yet?
Oh, so many places. So many places. Top places would definitely be, I want to get up to northern Norway, Lofoten Islands. Really want to get up there, and then really want to check out Peru as well. Haven't been there yet.
Do you find that you want to go to a place because you know you can get great photos and that brings you joy, or do you just know that you want to go to a place just to experience it and the photos will come?
Yeah, it's luckily for me, they're kind of one and the same. Like the places I enjoy are the places that I get great photos, just because I'm drawn to like the wide open spaces and the big mountains and the rugged landscapes. And those are the places that I shoot, so it sort of, they fit together. I mean, I do enjoy exploring new cities for a little bit, but I don't, that's not like my favorite thing to do when traveling. I love it. Like, did a trip around Southeast Asia to some of the biggest cities there, like Hong Kong and Tokyo and Taipei, and it was super fun, but I was definitely more tired after being in big cities for an entire trip than I am after backpacking in Patagonia and stuff. Just because that excites me so much more.
If someone was looking to do a longer term overseas trip, are you able to say like, okay, you should start here, or like, this is a place that I feel like everybody should go once in their lifetime?
Definitely Canada. I mean, it's almost like you could start with Canada essentially because it's very similar to the US. I mean, everyone speaks English. It's very easy to travel there, and Banff area is just incredible. The mountains there are some of my favorite, and then I really like the Vancouver area. So I mean, you could start by just crossing the border to the north, kind of dipping your toes in international travel.
Road trip. Oh yeah.
Exactly. Or even, I mean, Hawaii is within the U.S., but when I travel there, it almost feels like I'm doing a trip to another country.
Oh man, you look at a map and that state is not.
Yeah, it's way out there. And
close.
if you get away from like the resorts and the beaches, it can be a pretty wild, cool experience, especially going to like Kauai or Maui, and just exploring off of the touristy beaches. That's a good way to kind of start traveling. Same thing with Alaska too. It's kind of out there. I think international travel is something everyone should do at some point. Just you learn a lot traveling. There's definitely a lot that traveling opens your eyes to, and just kind of like makes you see that there's more than just the life that you're living here in the States or the lives of the people around you. There's a lot more going on in the world than we sometimes see.
So what's next for you as we wrap up? What's your next trip? What are some projects you're excited about?
Yeah, so next trip for me is the one to New Zealand coming up. I was first there, and that was my first international trip after I switched my major to photography. I went in college.
Oh, really?
Went in college with like 3 weeks and road tripped around both islands. And so I'm really excited to go back because I look at those images and they're terrible. I mean, so bad. So I'm excited to go.
And I'm sure you've grown so much since then.
Oh yeah. So I'm excited to go back and kind of revisit some of the places. I'm sure it'll be a lot more touristy now than it was 6 years ago.
I can't wait to see what you come back with.
But yeah,
That'll
so
be gorgeous.
I've got that trip, and then I'm going up to Canada for like a week right after that, and then right after the Canada trip, I'm heading down to Patagonia again this year. I went last year for the first time. It was kind of my bucket list destination that I hadn't checked off yet, and went last year and just fell in love with it. Going in April, pretty much all of April, going for 3 weeks again this year. It's their fall down there, so it's just such a beautiful time, and the mountains are incredible in Patagonia.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And for our listeners, you can view his work, of course, on Instagram at Michael Matti. And then you can check out michaelmatti.com, where you can buy prints and presets and just follow along with all his travels. So thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us. Any closing words for our listening audience?
Yeah, just happy to be on and chat today. And if anyone has any follow-up questions to this podcast, feel free to shoot me a message. I try to get to all my DMs on Instagram or send me an email, and I'll be happy to connect with you.
Well, thank you for joining us for another edition of the Rogue Ones podcast. It was so good to have you along. I want to give a special thank you to Ryan Swinehart of Sick Island Studios here in Nashville for mixing and mastering this podcast. A few people have asked me where they can find the I'm a Rogue t-shirt featured on my Instagram, which, by the way, is Leslie Gone Rogue. I have these amazingly comfortable t-shirts on the Rogue Marketplace, and you can get a shirt for yourself at rogueonespodcast.com. And while you're there, be sure to check out the Rogue One Spotify playlist, and it's curated by podcast followers. It features songs to make you feel like a true rogue, including my personal favorite, We're Not Gonna Take It by Twisted Sister. I mean, really, is there a better song in this world? There is not. So go check it out at rogueonespodcast.com. We'll talk to you next time.